Hey, BassGeek here, and today I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about early spring, late winter Alabama rigs. So the old Alabama rig, whether you love it, whether you hate it, whether you've ever used it or you should use it, whether tournaments allow it, it can sure be a fish finder. And it can sure be a lot of fun on those days that you're out there just for fun fishing. I love an Alabama rig. Most of your smaller tournaments like your BFLs do allow you to use Alabama rigs. So unless you're fishing something like the Opens or Toyota Series or you're a professional angler, the Alabama rig is allowed and you should use it. A few years back, I was fishing with a gentleman on Dale Hollow, and he put over 20 pounds of fish in fishing the Alabama rig and won that BFL. As I always say, make sure you check your state, your tournament, and your local regulations on the Alabama rig. Most everywhere, just for fun, allows some sort of variant on the Alabama rig. And I'm telling you, this time of year, guys, proof's in the pudding. You are going to catch a good one. Now, you can just go out there and take any Alabama rig. The truth of it is, and you can go catch fish on them. They're good. I think professional tournaments are to allow it in there with some sort of regulations. The problem was with the tournament anglers, the big tournament anglers, they were literally linking them all together, so they literally had a mass chain of Alabama rigs. But I think if you allow something like, you know, the same way the BFLs allow, you know, 3 hooks, 5 wires, 4 blades, 4 or 5 blades, I don't remember. I think that would be just fine. All that being said, the Alabama rig is not the be-all, end-all bait that it once was. You know, I remember when the Senkos first come out, and man, you could go catch just slay fish on them, 30 a day or more. And you still can in some places, but it's not like it used to be. So the fish get conditioned. The fish see these baits more and more and more. What I want to show you and what I want to share with you is how I break down Alabama rigs in different situations and what I like to do. So we're going to start with the Alabama rig itself, and I really focus on 2 types of Alabama rigs. And a lot of that has to do with the wire type of the Alabama rig. One of my favorite, and one that everybody should probably start with, is the good old Flash Mob Junior. This bait, and you forgive me, you know, the hooks have been on here for probably 2 years, so they're a little rusted. The good news is Flambeau is sending me, and I love my Flambeau Z-Rust stuff, but Flambeau is sending me a couple of the Z-Rust A-rig boxes. So Flambeau's sending me a couple, guys. I'll make sure to share those with you when they get here. This is a subtler A-rig because it's got a little stiffer wire to it. So you're not going to get the flex, the baits aren't going to come together as much, and you're not going to get a lot of extra action out of the wire itself. You're going to get some action, you know, your baits are going to do a lot of movement, but your wire isn't going to flex as much. This one is the Shane's baits. Now it's a much softer wire. This A-rig is going to give you a lot of pulsating motion by just giving it a quick turn of the handle or just a slight twitch of the rod tip. So you're going to get a much more moving, much more flowing Alabama rig and bait ball than you would with the Flash Mob Junior. Just like any bait, that's important at different times. So a day like today, it's a bluebird sky, it's really dead slick calm, and if I'm fishing for largemouth, this is probably what I'm going to throw most of the time. Largemouth tend to be stalker type feeders, so they're not going to chase a whole lot of times, especially not in the cold water. They're going to wait till something comes by, and they're going to want to see that bait and see how realistic it looks. That even goes right down to the bait type that I select a lot of times. But if I'm fishing for smallmouth, even in the cold weather, even in the wintertime, and I think you can see, you know, we've got a frozen little waterfall here behind me. Even in the cold weather, I want something that's going to give a little more motion, because in that cold weather, those smallmouth and those spotted bass are going to be a little more aggressive than those largemouth are. Before we jump into the baits, I want to talk about the heads. Now guys, the heads I tend to use are just the cheapest heads I can go to my local tackle shop and find, but I like the screw lock heads. You hear me talk about this all the time. It's going to save you a ton of baits getting tore off on your Alabama rig. So those screw lock heads. Now another thing, and you've seen it on there, guys, my go-to weight, you know, if I'm just fishing, you know, throwing it up near a bank, these steep, you know, mountainous terrain that I fish, if I'm fishing it on there, I like 1/8 ounce all the way around. And one of the things that you're going to see is this little beauty right here. This is from Picasso, and it's a dummy head, and you can actually screw it up there. I actually took this off. You can screw it up there. You do want to, even though it's a screw lock on these, you do want to put just a touch of super glue on there. So the good thing about it is you've still got that 1/8 ounce all the way around. Now a lot of people get real anal about the bait rolling, okay? The thing about the bait rolling is, let's imagine what a school of shad look like. Do they not appear to roll at times? Now the bait themselves, but do you think the bass are picking it out going, well, those bait are swimming upside down? Probably not. And the same thing with this, if it rolls a little bit, that's fine. You get a little bit of extra action. 90% of the time, just because of the weight of the hook not being there, it'll straighten itself back up. If you're one of those guys that can only fish 3 and you don't want to put the weights at the top, they make little hitchhikers that you can also use. And you can put a little heavier weights. And what I'd recommend is not on the middle, you're still going to get the roll, but on the 2 bottoms. So let's say I like to throw 1/8 ounce all the way around, but I don't have the Picasso 1/8 ounce dummy heads right here. So what I'm going to do is on the 2 bottom ones, I'm going to throw 2 1/4 ounces. Leave that 1/8 ounce in the middle and put hitchhikers at the top. So you just got to think about it on how it's going to go, how it's going to roll. For me, yes, I get in a lot of in-depth with it, but that's one of the few things that I don't really worry about. I want that bait to have a little bit of action to it to look as natural as possible. The baits themselves, I don't always fish rib, swim baits, or Kitex on these. Now my go-to size tends to be that 3.3. If I'm fishing around lakes that have bigger bass and bigger shad, bigger gizzard shad, I'm going to move up to that 3.8 a lot of times. That's going to be my go-to. And yes, once in a while, I will put some sort of different color, whether it's got a little bit of chartreuse, or a lot of times I may just go with pearl white all the way around and do something like a Tennessee shad or a sexy shad on the back. You know, color is just your preference, or I may do a 3.8 on the back, you know, something more around that 4-inch. But generally when I start, they're all the same size, because a lot of times what happens, and this is the reason why a lot of people don't like an A-rig, what happens is they'll come up and run through the school, and those hooks just kind of grab on. They just run through, and you know, you've got this fish with just multiple hooks trying to kill one of the shad. That's a lot of times how you're going to catch them. Now they will come up, they'll come up underneath and hit one of the bottom, but generally they do hit one of the bottom 2 or the back trailer. You know, play around with your colors, see what works for you, see what you have confidence in. That's another one of the things I don't get super in depth. I worry more about action than color. I think action matters a lot more than color. One of the things I think when you're around smallmouth as it warms up, so rib swim baits have a real wide kick, and I think as you warm up and as those fish get in chasing moods and they're really feeding hard, which means they're really running out to get stuff, I think for largemouth you need to slow the tail wiggle down so it looks more natural. And a lot of times you're gonna go, this is the little dipper, but the skinny dippers or the little dippers by Reaction Innovations are great. This is the Strike King. This is the Swimming Shiner. It's a little flatter side. I don't remember the Kitech name. It's something a minnow. Anyway, here it is. But I'll use that Kitech version. And then this is kind of the Strike King version of the Skinny Dipper, which is the Swimming Caffeine Shad. So those a lot of times when I'm around largemouth, predominantly largemouth is what I'm going to go to. I'm going to, you know, as the water temps warm up. Now right now, 100%, it's all going to be my ribbed swim baits because I'm moving this very slow. I am literally throwing this up, whether it's for largemouth or smallmouth. 90% of the time, I'm fishing bluff ends, bluffs. That's what I'm fishing early or late winter, early spring, okay? So very late winter, it's still cold. We've not had 2 or 3 days in the 60s or 70s yet. And so this is what I'm fishing. And this is a unique color that unfortunately I can't get anymore, which has been great. And it's called Sour Grape. It was by Bass Munitions. Electric Blue Chartreuse is a great, is the color that I would substitute. And again, what am I going to be fishing with this? Got a lot of movement, got a lot of tail movement, got bright colors. I'm going to be fishing smallmouth with this setup right here 90% of the time. Now, you'll also see I've got 2 different rods set up. This rod is a little different. It's a little softer by Lew's. This is a custom speed stick or custom plus speed stick, and it's got a little more tip to it. It's a little softer. You're going to be able to throw the lighter baits with it a little bit better. And I pair that with this is a BB1 Pro that has done a great job. It's got a nice wide spool. This is an old, one of the very few Veritas rods that I have left, but this rod has done its job. All the others broke, the eyes fell out and everything else. But this is the Alabama rig rod. I'll put out there. I'm actually getting ready to upgrade this rod, so I'll put out there the rod that I'm going to upgrade it to. But this has been a great rod. The very tip of the tip broke off on me and I replaced that. It's still great. And the reason why I didn't mind too much about that tip is because this is my heavier rod. So if I'm fishing out here and it's cold early spring and I need to throw something deeper, I'm going to put on some quarters and maybe even 3/8 ounces. All the way up to 1/2 ounces. This is the rod I'm going to throw it on, and I've got it paired with a Lew's Super Duty speed spool. The speeds 6.4 is what I'm going to throw. Both of these are 6.4, but during the winter time, if you are one of those guys like me, it's real hard for me to slow my cadence down. It's actually, I'm one of those guys, it's harder for me to slow my cadence down than it is for me to speed it up. For me, during the winter time, if you can't just kind of keep in your mind to slow down, one of the things I like to do, like I was getting ready to say, is I love to throw it up against these steep bluffs and literally keep in contact almost the entire time down that wall. Now, when I talk about line, I'm going to throw anywhere from 15 to 20 pound. If you're first starting out with an A-rig, I heavily recommend you throwing the regular K9, which is kind of like mono on steroids. It's kind of like a copolymer. As he says, it's his original recipe, Kelly from K9. But it has a little more stretch than the Pro 100 K9 line, which is 100% fluorocarbon. So if you're first starting out, absolutely use that. I've been throwing them for years. It's Pro 100 all the way. 15 to 20 pound test on here is what I've got on both these rods. I think I've got 20 pound test on both of them. I do want to add in one thing. Now, I know a lot of you guys that fish shallower water. If you're fishing shallower water, put on the hitchhikers on top to lessen the weight, and then go down to 1/4 on the bottom 3, or even go down to like the 3/16 or just the super light if you're fishing a lot of flats. because as you get into the spring, those bass love to pull up on the flats, and you're going to want to keep this just off the bottom. And that's key anytime. You're going to want to keep it realistically during the winter time, almost dragging the bottom the whole time. You want to keep it less than a foot to the bottom. Every once in a while, when it's cold during the late winter, very early spring, you want to feel this bait bumping bottom, okay? The other thing is, you know, as far as retrieves go, when I'm fishing, as we get into the warmer weather, I love to put that little quick turn of the reel handle in here. So it gives, even with this at times, even though the wire itself really isn't flexing a whole lot, the baits themselves will just flutter a little bit. I don't do a whole lot of rod twitches. I can do exactly that with just a quick half turn or even quarter turn of the handle. Now, there's a little bit of a technique to casting them. So let's go out there and I'll show you how to cast these so they're not fouling up. Casting an A-rig, especially casting a soft wire A-rig, there's a trick to it. Now, what I did right there is I made that cast and I stopped it. I just oh man, I wasn't ready for that. That's pretty funny. But that's the key. Notice, every bait is in its place. Every bait is in its place. You want to stop it before it hits the water and start pulling toward you as it's hitting the water. Right there. That's the key. That is the trick to keeping your baits straight. All right, so that is my system when it comes to the Alabama rig. I find it to be pretty in-depth. I hope you guys do too. And I hope you go out and catch more fish right now. Pick it up right now and start going. As always, questions and comments in the comment section below. If you guys got anything to add, please, I'm always open to learn more. So like it if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. Make sure you click that bell so you get the notifications when these videos come out. And as always, you guys rock.